My son laughed at my modest living. He didn't know my art just sold for $1 million. When my son Bradley looked around my small apartment and said, "Dad, this place is pathetic. No wonder Mom left you. You'll never amount to anything," I simply smiled and said, "You might be right, son." By the next week, I had purchased a penthouse downtown and cut him completely out of my will. And that was just the beginning. For 30 years, I had supported Bradley through everything. Private schools, college tuition, his failed business ventures, even his wedding. I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment while sending him checks whenever he called. But when he brought his new wife, Amber, to visit last month, everything changed. They thought they were dealing with a washed-up old man who painted landscapes as a hobby. They were about to learn I was one of the most successful artists they'd never heard of. They thought I was just their personal ATM with nothing to show for my life. They were about to discover who really held all the cards. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Let me take you back to how this all started. My name is Walter Thornton, and for the past 30 years, I've been living what most people would call a double life. After my divorce from Bradley's mother 15 years ago, I chose to live simply. My apartment was small but comfortable, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and most importantly, a spare room I converted into my art studio. The walls were covered with my landscape paintings, and easels stood in every corner. To Bradley, I was just his dad who painted pretty pictures of mountains and lakes. He never asked about my work, never showed interest in my art. When he needed money, which was often, he'd call with some emergency. Car repair, rent money, medical bills for his kids. I always said yes. "Dad, I know you don't have much, but could you help us out?" he'd say, "just until we get back on our feet." I'd drive to my bank, withdraw money from what he thought was my modest retirement account, and hand it over. Over the years, I'd given him close to $200,000. Every time, he promised to pay me back when things got better. But Bradley's attitude had been changing lately. Ever since he married Amber 2 years ago, he'd become more demanding, more entitled. Amber came from money, and she clearly looked down on me. Their visits became less frequent and more painful. They'd sit in my small living room, Amber scrolling through her phone while Bradley made comments about my situation. "Dad, you really should think about moving to a senior community," he'd say. "This neighborhood isn't safe, and you're getting older." What he meant was, "You're embarrassing us." The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. Bradley called and said he was bringing Amber over to discuss something important. I made dinner, cleaned the apartment, and waited. They arrived an hour late. Amber wore designer clothes and kept checking her diamond watch. Bradley wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Dad, we need to talk," Bradley said as they sat on my old couch. "Amber and I have been discussing your future." "My future?" Amber spoke up for the first time. "Walter, Bradley has been supporting you for years. We think it's time you move somewhere more appropriate for your income level." I blinked. "Supporting me?" "Dad, let's be honest," Bradley said. "You live in this tiny place. You have no real income except Social Security, and your painting hobby isn't exactly paying the bills. We're worried about you." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I've never asked you for money, Bradley." "But you take it when we offer," Amber said with a smug smile. "We've given you thousands over the years." I stared at them. In their minds, they had somehow flipped reality. The money I gave them had become money they gave me. "We found a nice assisted living place," Bradley continued. "It's affordable, and you'll have people to look after you. We can help with the costs." "I don't need assistance," I said quietly. Amber laughed. "Walter, look around. You're 72, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment, painting pictures nobody buys. Face reality." That's when Bradley delivered the words that would change everything. "Dad, this place is pathetic. No wonder Mom left you. You'll never amount to anything." The room went silent. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, supported, and loved unconditionally, and saw a stranger. "You might be right, son," I said calmly. They exchanged glances, probably thinking they'd finally gotten through to me. "We'll start looking at facilities next week," Amber said, already reaching for her purse. After they left, I sat in my studio, surrounded by my paintings. Landscapes I'd created over decades, each one holding memories and meaning. To them, just worthless hobby art. But they had no idea who Walter Thornton really was. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled myself. Walter Thornton artist, brought up dozens of results. Gallery websites, auction records, collector forums. My paintings had been selling under a pseudonym, W.T. Morrison, for over 20 years. The latest sale was just 2 months ago. Mountain Solitude number 47 sold for $85,000. I scrolled through the auction records. In the past 5 years alone, my work had generated over $3 million in sales. The gallery took their cut, taxes took their share, but what remained had been quietly accumulating in investment accounts Bradley knew nothing about. My phone rang. It was my gallery director, Helen Ashworth. "Walter, wonderful news." Her excited voice came through. "The collector who bought 3 of your pieces last year wants to purchase your entire Seasons of Solitude series. All 12 paintings. The entire series?" I sat up straighter. "He's offering $1.2 million for the complete collection. I know it's your best work, but Walter, this could set you up for life." I almost laughed. Set me up for life? I was already set up. But this offer was something else entirely. "Helen, I need to think about it." "Of course, but don't think too long. He's flying back to Switzerland next week." After hanging up, I sat in my studio looking at the 12 paintings she'd mentioned. Each one had taken months to complete. They showed the same mountain valley through every season, capturing light and shadow and the passage of time. My phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. "Dad, Amber found a great place in Sunshine Valley Retirement Community. Can we schedule a tour this weekend?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I scrolled back to my conversation with Helen. "The collector wants the series," I murmured to myself. $1.2 million. That's when I realized what I had to do. Bradley and Amber thought they knew who they were dealing with. They thought I was a broke old man who needed their charity. They were about to learn the truth. I picked up my phone and started making calls. First to Helen, then to my financial advisor, then to my lawyer. If they wanted to play games with reality, I was going to show them what reality actually looked like. But first, I needed to gather some evidence of my own. I've learned a lot about people in my 72 years, and one thing I know for certain is this. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Bradley and Amber had shown me exactly who they were. Now I needed to document it. I started with my financial records. Every check I'd written to Bradley, every bank transfer, every cash withdrawal. My accountant had kept meticulous records, and the numbers were staggering. Over 15 years, I had given my son $187,000. Not loaned, given. Every transaction had a memo: Bradley car repair, Bradley rent assistance, Bradley medical bills, Bradley business loan. Never once had I asked for repayment. Never once had I gotten any. But according to them, they had been supporting me. I spent the next week documenting everything. I found emails Bradley had sent over the years, full of promises to pay me back as soon as things turn around. I found text messages where he thanked me for saving his life with emergency money. I also did something else. I set up a small recorder in my living room. You see, Bradley still had a key to my apartment. He'd kept it in case of emergencies, but I suspected he and Amber had been coming by when I wasn't home. Little things had been moved around. Nothing valuable missing, but small changes that made me wonder. The recorder would catch any unauthorized visits. I also called my bank and had them print out detailed records of every account. Not just my checking account that Bradley knew about, but everything. The investment accounts, the savings accounts, the art income accounts. Total assets, $4.7 million. Bradley thought I was poor. He had no idea I was wealthier than he'd ever be. While I gathered evidence, I also started making strategic moves. I called my estate attorney, Amanda Walsh, and scheduled an appointment. "Walter, it's been years," she said when I walked into her office. "What brings you here?" "I need to update my will," I said simply. She pulled out my current document. In it, I'd left everything to Bradley, with provisions for his children's education. "What changes do you want to make?" "I want to remove Bradley entirely." Amanda's eyebrows rose. "That's a significant change. May I ask why?" I told her everything. The visits, the demands that I moved to assisted living, the way they'd rewritten history to make themselves the generous ones. Family disputes are always difficult, she said carefully. This isn't a dispute, I replied. This is me finally seeing clearly. We spent 2 hours drafting a new will. My assets would go to various charities, with specific provisions for Bradley's children's education, money they could access directly without going through their father. Amanda had one more suggestion. Walter, given the amounts involved, you might want to consider a competency evaluation. Why? If Bradley contests the will, he might claim you weren't of sound mind when you changed it. Having a current psychological evaluation would prevent that argument. Smart woman. I scheduled the evaluation for the following week. But the most important call I made was to Helen at the gallery. Helen, I've decided to accept the offer for this season series. Wonderful. When can you bring them in? Actually, I want to do something special with this sale. I want to reveal my identity. Silence on the other end. Walter, you've been W.T. Morrison for 20 years. Are you sure? I'm sure. I want a public event. A gallery showing where Walter Thornton steps forward as W.T. Morrison. Make it big, Helen. Make it news. I could hear the excitement building in her voice. A reveal event. Walter, that's brilliant. The art world loves a good mystery solved. I can probably get the Tribune to cover it, maybe even some national outlets. Perfect. And Helen? I want it next weekend. Next weekend? Walter, that's very short notice for something this big. Trust me, I said. The timing is perfect. After I hung up, I looked around my small apartment one more time. The place Bradley and Amber thought was so pathetic. The place they wanted to move me out of. They had no idea that in 1 week, I'd be revealing myself as one of the most successful landscape artists in the country. But first, I had one more piece of evidence to collect. What they didn't know was that their father had been planning this moment for 30 years. Let me tell you about the conversation that changed everything. It was Thursday evening when my hidden recorder picked up voices in my apartment. I was at the grocery store, but Bradley and Amber had let themselves in with his key. When I got home and played back the recording, I heard everything I needed to hear. God, this place depresses me. Amber's voice came through clearly. How long do we have to keep pretending to care about the old man? Just until we get him moved, Bradley replied. Once he's in Sunshine Valley, we won't have to visit anymore. But we'll still have to pay for it. He's got no money. Bradley laughed. Are you kidding? We're not paying for anything. I've been working on Mom. She feels guilty about the divorce. She'll cover the costs if I tell her Dad's getting senile. Your mother has money? She married that surgeon, remember? Dr. Phillips has serious cash. Mom will pay for Dad's care just to ease her conscience. I sat in my car in the parking lot, listening to my son plan my future like I was already dead. What about his paintings? Amber asked. What about them? Nobody wants amateur landscape art. We'll donate them or throw them away when we clean out this place. Some of them are actually pretty good. Pretty good doesn't pay bills, babe. Dad's been living in fantasy land for years, thinking he's some kind of artist. It's time he faced reality. The recording went on for another 10 minutes. They went through my personal belongings, discussing what to keep and what to toss. They found my small safe behind a painting and tried several combinations to open it. Probably just has his birth certificate and some old photos, Bradley said when they couldn't get it open. If only they knew that safe contained the documentation for every single art sale I'd ever made. That night, I finalized my plan. Step 1 was already in motion. Helen had arranged the gallery event for Saturday night. The Tribune would be there, along with several art collectors and critics. The story would be that W.T. Morrison, the mysterious landscape artist whose work had been selling for decades, would finally reveal his true identity. Step 2 involved my financial advisor, Patrick Chun. I called him Friday morning. Patrick, I need you to liquidate my bond portfolio and move everything into checking accounts. Walter, that's a lot of money to have sitting liquid. Are you making a major purchase? You could say that. I'm purchasing my dignity back. Patrick handled millionaire clients. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. Step 3 was the psychological evaluation Amanda had recommended. Dr. Rebecca Hartley spent 3 hours testing my cognitive function, memory, and decision-making ability. Mr. Thornton, Your test scores are excellent, she said afterward. Your mind is as sharp as someone half your age. I'll have a written report to your attorney by Monday. Step 4 was the most important call of all. Mom, I said when my ex-wife Carol answered. Walter, is everything wrong? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has Bradley talked to you about me lately? Long pause. He's concerned about you, Walter. He says you're struggling financially and might need assistance. What kind of assistance? He mentioned a retirement community. He thought I might help with the costs. There it was. Bradley's backup plan, just like I'd heard on the recording. Carol, I need you to come to something Saturday night. It's important. Walter, I don't think. Please. One night. I promise you'll understand everything. She agreed, reluctantly. Step 5 was my masterstroke. I called Bradley Friday afternoon. Son, I've been thinking about what you and Amber said. You're right. I need to face reality. Dad, that's great. We can tour Sunshine Valley this weekend. Actually, I want to do something first. I'm having a small goodbye party tomorrow night. Just a few friends from the art community to say farewell to my painting days. Dad, you don't need to. It's important to me, Bradley. I've been painting for 40 years. I want to close that chapter properly. Okay, where is it? The Ashworth Gallery downtown. 7 o'clock. Will you and Amber come? Sure, Dad. We'll be there. After I hung up, I sat back and smiled. Bradley and Amber thought they were coming to watch a pathetic old man give up his hobby. Instead, they were about to witness the revelation that would destroy every assumption they'd ever made about me. But the most beautiful part of my plan wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the fact that I'd recorded our entire conversation on Thursday. Every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every plan to manipulate my ex-wife. Saturday night wasn't just going to be an art reveal. It was going to be a reckoning. Saturday arrived with perfect autumn weather. The kind of day that makes colors pop and shadows dance. Exactly the kind of light I'd been painting for 40 years. I spent the morning at the gallery, helping Helen arrange the display. My 12 seasons of solitude, paintings hung in a circle in the main room, with spotlights highlighting every brushstroke. A small placard read, "The final collection of W.T. Morrison, Identity, to be revealed tonight." Walter, I've never seen you this calm before a showing, Helen observed. I've never had this much to reveal before. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. Bradley and Amber arrived at my apartment at 3 o'clock, 2 hours before they were supposed to pick me up. Dad, we came early to help you get ready, Bradley said, but I could see Amber eyeing my paintings with new interest. That's thoughtful, but I'm already prepared. Amber walked over to my easel, where I'd been working on a new piece. Walter, I have to say, your technique has really improved. This mountain scene is quite sophisticated. I almost laughed. The painting she was admiring had already been purchased by a collector in New York for $40,000. I just hadn't told him that yet. Thank you, Amber. I've been practicing. Bradley joined her at the easel. Dad, maybe you shouldn't give up painting entirely. You could keep doing it as a hobby, even at Sunshine Valley. We'll see, I said. At 6 o'clock, I put on my best suit, the one I wore to gallery openings that they'd never seen. Bradley and Amber exchanged glances when I emerged from my bedroom. Dad, you look different, Bradley said. It's a special night. The drive to the gallery was quiet. I sat in the back seat of Bradley's BMW, watching the city lights reflect off the windows. Amber kept checking her makeup in the mirror, clearly expecting a small gathering of amateur painters. They had no idea what they were walking into. The Ashworth Gallery was packed. 50 of the city's most prominent art collectors, 3 newspaper critics, a photographer from the Tribune, and several other artists I'd known for years. Helen had outdone herself. Dad, Bradley whispered as we walked in. Who are all these people? Art lovers, I said simply. I spotted my ex-wife Carol near the back, looking confused but elegant in a black dress. She caught my eye and waved uncertainly. Helen appeared at my side. Walter, are you ready for this? I've been ready for 20 years. At exactly 7:30, Helen called for attention. The crowd gathered around us, with Bradley and Amber standing close to me, still looking puzzled. Ladies and gentlemen, Helen began, tonight marks a historic moment in our city's art co. I watched Bradley's face. still confused, but starting to pay attention. Tonight, for the first time, W.D. Morrison has agreed to step out of anonymity and reveal his true identity. The crowd murmured with excitement. Art world mysteries were rare and precious. I give you the man behind the brush, the artist who has touched so many lives with his vision of natural beauty, Walter Thornton. The applause was thunderous. Camera flashes popped. The Tribune photographer stepped forward for pictures. I looked at Bradley and Amber. Their faces had gone completely white. "Dad," Bradley whispered. Helen continued. Walter's latest collection, Seasons of Solitude, sold this week for $1.2 million, making it one of the largest single art sales in our city's history. More applause. More camera flashes. Bradley grabbed my arm. "Dad, what is she talking about?" I smiled at him, the same calm smile I'd given him when he insulted my apartment. "I'm talking about reality, son." The crowd pressed forward with congratulations. Art collectors who had purchased my work over the years introduced themselves. Critics asked about my technique and inspiration. Through it all, Bradley and Amber stood frozen, watching their entire worldview crumble. But this was just the beginning. The real revelation was yet to come. As the congratulations died down, Helen made another announcement. Walter has also agreed to share the story behind his decision to finally reveal his identity. "Walter," I stepped forward, my voice carrying clearly through the gallery's sound system. "For 20 years, I've painted under a pseudonym because I valued privacy over recognition. I lived simply, focused on my art, and let my work speak for itself." The crowd listened intently. I could see Carol in the back, her hand over her mouth in shock. This week, someone told me I would never amount to anything, that my life was pathetic and my paintings were worthless. Murmurs of sympathy from the crowd. That person was my son. The murmurs stopped. Every eye in the room turned to Bradley, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Bradley believed I was living on Social Security and charity. He never asked about my work, never showed interest in my success. To him, I was just a source of emergency money when he needed it. I pulled out a folder I'd brought with me. Over the past 15 years, I've given my son $187,000. Money he promised to repay, but never did. Money he's now reframed as his charity to me. Bradley stepped forward. "Dad, please, let me finish." My voice remained calm, but firm. This week, he and his wife decided I needed to be moved to assisted living because my pathetic lifestyle was embarrassing to them. I opened the folder and pulled out a transcript of the recording. They came to my apartment Thursday evening while I was out. I'd like to share what they said about me, thinking I couldn't hear them. "Dad, no." Bradley's voice cracked. I began reading from the transcript. "God, this place depresses me. How long do we have to keep pretending to care about the old man?" Gasps from the crowd. Bradley's face turned red. I continued. "We're not paying for anything. I've been working on Mom. She feels guilty about the divorce. She'll cover the costs if I tell her Dad's getting senile." Carol's sharp intake of breath was audible from across the room. "Nobody wants amateur landscape art. We'll donate them or throw them away when we clean out this place." The art collectors in the room looked horrified. Several of them own my work. I folded the transcript and put it away. "Ladies and gentlemen, those paintings they plan to throw away? You're looking at a portion of my life's work. Paintings that have sold for anywhere from $20,000 to $85,000 each." Helen stepped forward with a printed list. "For anyone interested, here are Walter's sales records for the past 5 years. Over $3 million in documented sales." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Several people immediately approached Helen about purchasing pieces. I turned to Bradley and Amber, who stood frozen in the center of the room. "Son, you said I needed to face reality. You were right. The reality is that you and your wife are manipulative, cruel, and greedy. The reality is that I've been financially supporting someone who views me as a burden. Dad, we can explain. The reality is that I don't need your explanations anymore." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a copy of my new will. "As of yesterday, you are no longer my heir. My estate will go to charities that actually help people, rather than people who help themselves." Bradley's face went from red to white. "Dad, you can't." "I can, and I have. Dr. Rebecca Hartley evaluated my mental competency yesterday. I scored in the top 5% for my age group. I looked around the room at the faces watching this family drama unfold. But the most important reality is this. I'm not the pathetic old man you thought I was. I'm not dependent on your charity. I'm not embarrassing you anymore because as of tonight, we're no longer family. Carol had made her way through the crowd. She walked up to Bradley with tears in her eyes. "How could you?" she said quietly. "How could you treat your father this way?" "Mom, it's not what it sounds like." I heard every word he read, every cruel, calculating word. She turned to me. "Walter, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault, Carol. You couldn't have known." The Tribune photographer had been documenting everything. The gallery owner was already fielding calls from people who wanted to purchase my work. But the best part was watching Bradley and Amber realize that their entire plan had backfired. Instead of moving me to assisted living, they'd exposed themselves as greedy manipulators in front of 50 of the city's most influential people. Instead of hiding my embarrassing hobby, they'd revealed me as a successful artist whose work was worth millions. Instead of maintaining their image as caring family members, they've been exposed as frauds who saw me only as a source of money. The evening was far from over, but the public humiliation phase was complete. Now came the legal consequences. Monday morning brought the phone call I'd been expecting. "Dad, we need to talk." Bradley's voice was strained, desperate. "I think we said everything that needed saying Saturday night. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my apartment. I arrived to find him waiting with red eyes and wrinkled clothes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad, I know how it looked, but you don't understand the pressure we've been under." "What pressure?" "Amber's father cut her off financially when we got married. Her credit cards, her allowance, everything. We've been struggling to maintain appearances." I sipped my coffee and waited. "When you kept helping us with money, we thought you had more than you were telling us. The apartment, the simple lifestyle. We figured you were just being careful with money. So you decided I was senile and needed assisted living?" Bradley winced. "That was Amber's idea. She thought if we could get you into care, you'd be safer, and we could help manage your finances." "Manage them how?" "By making sure you didn't get taken advantage of by con artists or scammers." I almost laughed. The only people taking advantage of me were sitting in my living room. "Dad, please. I know I messed up, but I'm your son. We can work this out." "Actually, Bradley, we can't." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out several documents. "First, this is a formal demand for repayment of the $187,000 I've given you over the years. My attorney has determined that your promises to repay constitute legally binding agreements." Bradley's eyes widened. "Dad, I don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll need to work out a payment plan with my attorney." "Dad." "Second, this is a cease and desist order. You and Amber are no longer allowed on my property or to use your key to enter my apartment. Any further unauthorized entry will be considered breaking and entering." I slid another document across the table. "Third, this is a copy of my new will, filed with the court and notarized. As I mentioned Saturday night, you inherit nothing." Bradley stared at the papers. "You're really doing this?" "I'm protecting myself from people who see me as a target rather than a father." "What about my kids? Your grandchildren?" "Their education funds are protected in a trust they can access directly when they turn 18. Money you can't touch." Bradley's voice broke. "Dad, I know I said terrible things, but I love you." "Bradley, let me ask you something. In the past 5 years, how many times have you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not because you needed something, but just to see how I was doing." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "How many times have you asked about my paintings, my health, my happiness?" Silence. "How many times have you invited me to dinner, or a movie, or to spend time with your children?" "Dad." "The answer is 0, Bradley. 0 times in 5 years. The only time you visited was to ask for money or to tell me I needed to change my life to suit your comfort." I stood up, leaving the documents on the table. "That's not love, son. That's exploitation. Where does this leave us?" "It leaves you learning to live without my financial support. It leaves you explaining to your wife that her plan backfired. and it leaves me free to live my life without worrying about the next crisis you'll call me to solve. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Bradley? The Tribune is running a feature story on me this Sunday about my art career, my success, and my decision to cut ties with family members who saw me as their personal bank account. You might want to prepare Amber for that. I left him sitting there, staring at the legal documents that had just changed his life forever. But my work wasn't done yet. There was one more person who needed to understand the new reality. 2 days later, Amber showed up at my apartment alone. Walter, we need to talk. I'm sorry, but I have a cease and desist order against you and Bradley. You need to leave. Please, just hear me out. 5 minutes. Something in her tone was different. Not the entitled princess I'd met before, but something closer to desperation. You have 3 minutes. We'll talk in the hallway. I stepped outside my apartment, leaving the door cracked open. Walter, I know you think I'm some kind of gold digger, but you don't know the whole story. I know enough. My father disowned me when I married Bradley. He said I was making a mistake, marrying beneath my social class. When I chose love over money, he cut me off completely. I waited. Bradley told me you were wealthy, but pretending to be poor. He said you were testing us, seeing if we'd still love him without your money. That's why we kept asking for help. We thought it was some kind of game you were playing. A game. He said you'd done the same thing to your ex-wife. Pretended to be struggling financially to see if she'd stick by you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Amber, is that really what he told you? Yes. He said you owned property in other states, had money hidden in overseas accounts, that the apartment was just an act. Why would you believe that? Because who gives away hundreds of thousands of dollars if they're really poor? Bradley said no truly broke person would be that generous unless they had money hidden somewhere. For the first time, I saw Amber clearly. Not as a manipulative gold digger, but as someone who'd been manipulated herself. Amber, I need to ask you something directly. Did you know that Bradley has been planning to have me declared mentally incompetent? Her face went white. What? He's been telling his mother that I'm becoming senile, setting up a scenario where he could gain control of my finances as my guardian. That's no, Walter. He told me we were helping you transition to assisted living because you asked for help. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from Thursday night. Amber's voice came through clearly. How long do we have to keep pretending to care about the old man? She listened in horror as her own words played back. Walter, I was frustrated. I thought you were playing games with us, pretending to be poor when you had millions. I thought you were manipulating Bradley by living in a modest apartment and painting landscapes. It sounds insane when you say it like that. Amber, let me show you something. I invited her into my apartment, violating my own cease and desist order, but needing her to understand. I showed her my financial records, my art sales, my modest lifestyle choices. I live simply because I like simplicity. I paint because I love painting. I help Bradley because he's my son, not because I was testing anyone. Amber sat down heavily on my couch. He lied to me about everything. Not everything, but enough. Walter, what he said about your ex-wife leaving you. He told me she divorced you because you were financially irresponsible. Carol divorced me because we grew apart after Bradley left for college. It was amicable. We're still friends. And the overseas accounts don't exist. The property in other states? I own this apartment and have money in local banks and investment accounts. That's it. Amber put her head in her hands. I feel so stupid. You trusted your husband. That's not stupid. But the things I said about you, the way I acted, were based on lies he told you. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you decide what kind of person you want to be. Someone who learns from this experience, or someone who blames everyone else for being deceived. Can you forgive me? I thought about it for a long moment. Amber, I can forgive you, but I can't trust you. And I can't have a relationship with someone who believed I was capable of such elaborate deception without ever asking me directly about it. So this is it. You're cutting us both off forever. I'm protecting myself from people who see conspiracy and manipulation in simple kindness. I'm too old to spend my remaining years wondering when the next crisis will require my financial intervention. She nodded slowly. The money Bradley owes you, we don't have it. Then he'll need to get a job that pays enough to cover monthly payments. Or sell some of the things I helped him buy over the years. The house, the cars, my jewelry, it was all bought with your money, wasn't it? I don't know, Amber. I stopped keeping track of what my money paid for years ago. She stood up, her designer purse suddenly looking like a burden rather than a status symbol. Walter, for what it's worth, your paintings really are beautiful. I wasn't lying about that. Thank you. And your son, despite everything, he does love you. He's just been lost for a long time. I know he does, but love without respect isn't enough anymore. After she left, I sat in my studio looking at my latest painting. A winter landscape with a single figure walking away from the viewer, heading toward distant mountains. Sometimes walking away is the only path toward peace. 3 months have passed since that night at the gallery. My life has changed in ways I never expected. The Tribune feature story brought attention from art collectors across the country. My paintings now sell for significantly more than they did when I was anonymous. Helen says mystery and revelation always increase value in the art world. More importantly, I've met new people, art lovers, fellow painters, collectors who appreciate not just my work, but my story. I'm no longer isolated in my small apartment, wondering if my next phone call will be another financial emergency. I moved out of the one-bedroom apartment last month, not to assisted living, but to a beautiful loft downtown with huge windows and space for a proper studio. I kept the apartment simple and modest, but now by choice rather than necessity. Bradley has called several times, but I haven't answered. My attorney handles all communication about the money he owes me. He's made 3 payments so far, small amounts, but consistent. I suspect he finally got a job that pays better than whatever he was doing before. Carol and I have had dinner twice. She apologized repeatedly for not seeing what was happening, but I told her there was nothing to apologize for. We're different people now than we were when we were married, but we can be friends. The most unexpected change is my relationship with my grandchildren. When they turned 18 last month, they gained access to their education trust funds. They called to thank me and to ask if they could visit. Grandpa, my granddaughter said, Dad told us you cut him off because you're rich and mean. But Mom showed us the newspaper article. You're not mean at all. Your father isn't mean either, I told her. He's just lost his way. They visited last week. Bright, curious young adults who were genuinely interested in my art and my story. They spent 3 hours in my studio asking about technique and inspiration. Grandpa, why didn't you ever show us your paintings before? Your father never brought you to visit my studio. Can we come back? Anytime you want. It turns out that having relationships based on genuine interest rather than financial need is much more fulfilling than I'd remembered. My bank account is healthier than ever, but more importantly, my life is richer in ways that have nothing to do with money. I wake up each morning excited to paint, to explore new techniques, to capture the light in ways I've never tried before. Last week, a young artist contacted me through the gallery. She'd read about my story and wanted advice about pursuing art as a career. Is it worth it? She asked. The uncertainty, the criticism, the financial instability? Art isn't about money, I told her. It's about creating something that matters to you, regardless of whether anyone else understands it. But you made millions from your art. I made millions because I painted for 40 years without caring about the money. The money came because the work was genuine. What if my family doesn't support me? I thought about Bradley, about years of dismissive comments and assumptions. Then you paint anyway. Real family supports your dreams. People who try to make you smaller aren't really family, regardless of what they call themselves. She thanked me and left, but I kept thinking about our conversation. The truth is, cutting Bradley off wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. For 30 years, I'd enabled his view of me as a resource rather than a person. I'd accepted his assumption that my life was somehow less valuable than his comfort. I'd allowed him to treat my generosity as weakness and my kindness as stupidity. The gallery event didn't just reveal my identity as an artist. It revealed my identity as a man who deserves respect. Today, I'm working on a new series. P.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.